This short video deals with the article by Shelton entitled "The Harm of First Do No Harm." It was published in 2000. In this very brief but important essay, James Shelton encourages all individuals in healthcare to carefully consider the long-held dictum that first do no harm. Now, Shelton is not advocating forgetting this or not paying attention to the absolute ethical mandate to maximize beneficence and minimize burden or harm to the individual. But rather, Shelton is saying that the idea that providers are infallible and never make mistakes is a fallacy, and it results in many problems that could be avoided. This slide provides some historical background of the scope of the problems of errors that are made by healthcare providers. The statistics are frightening. I would encourage you to bookmark the website for the report "To Err is Human." You will be reviewing this in your nursing research and public health courses within the nursing curriculum. Shelton makes an interesting distinction between error and risk. Error leads to harm. Now, risk is a possibility for harm, but harm may or may not occur from a particular identified risk. Remember that it is not possible to do no harm all the time. It is not possible to avoid harm at all in all situations, and that every time some intervention is done, there is the possibility of harm. Also, doing nothing may result in harm. The key is minimizing the risk to reduce the possibility of harm that evolved from the risky behavior or policy. And Shelton identifies 6 issues or 6 problems, misconceptions with the idea of doing no harm in healthcare that he believes needs to be addressed and clarified. The first misconception is that we as providers and society operate under the delusion that errors do not and should not exist. It is not possible to eliminate all errors. The key is to learn from them to prevent them from recurring. And the second misconception is that we have a tendency to think of errors of commission and tend not to think about errors resulting from omission or not doing an activity. Both are equally dangerous. Both need to be identified and reviewed in order to prevent potential problems. The third misconception or fallacy is the idea of first do no harm requires assessment and assignment of blame. It results in the idea that if there is an error, it is someone's fault. Someone must be blamed. It is not approached from the idea of looking at the system, but seeks to identify a particular individual at fault who committed the error. Only correcting one individual will not work effectively to minimize harm, because another individual working within the same flawed or ineffective system may make that same error if the system is not corrected. The fourth misconception is that the idea promotes false expectations among the public that healthcare is risk-free. And the belief is that if healthcare is risk-free, it requires the provider to be error-free, and that's not realistic. Because of these unstated but perceived unrealistic expectations, workers in healthcare tend to hide errors to reduce that fault and blaming, to, in essence, reduce that loss of the expectation of perfection. That's too much of a burden. That's too much unrealistic expectations. But the fifth idea is that the idea of do no harm ever does not recognize the role or influence of the patient or other partners in the decision making. It places blame on the provider exclusively, and there is not consideration of the role played by the patient or others in the system who are involved in the decision-making process. The sixth problem that Shelton identifies is the fact that this expectation forces healthcare workers to operate on a zero-tolerance expectation that is just really unrealistic. This leads to denying situations, hiding errors, not reporting mistakes, and this behavior is not beneficial to anyone. Shelton advocates for a balanced, sensible approach in which errors are quickly and accurately and honestly identified, and then developing a system for learning from those errors that in which learning is welcomed and is the expected behavior. And Shelton concludes by stating that not identifying errors quickly and not learning from them to prevent repeated errors actually leads to the greater harm for individuals and for society. This short video gives an overview of the Shelton article. Please refer to your Exam 1 study guide questions for exact information that is relevant from this particular article.